Welcome to Channel AMEC, your insight to the Australian visa system. Good day everyone, my name is Carl Young, your online YouTube visa consultant. Are you interested about migrating to Australia? Why don't you consider to subscribe to my channel and turn on a little bell on the side, so once we have all the updates and news, you'll be the first one of getting all the insight. Now today's video is exciting. It's gonna be a little bit long, but I will try to be as short as possible to squeeze every single state and territory criteria in this video. So if you want to know the whole 2022 and 23 skill migration, this is the right video. Obviously, if you want to know more detail, I've done all those specific state nomination criteria video in a separate video previously. You may want to click on that. And how do you utilize our YouTube channel? I've done over thousands of videos. That's including the Chinese version and English version. I think more than that anyway. I have 1,500 or something like that. But you can always utilize our YouTube channel by going to our channel and forget about the top search thing at the top. But there, you see there's a search here, a little magnifier. If you can search within our channel, you can actually probably find a lot of answers to whatever the question that you have. So why don't you utilize that, as we have got I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of video already with all the Q&As in there. But obviously if you cannot find your answers there, more than welcome to leave a comment right down below. And also we've activated the super chat function. So if we go into our chat, our YouTube channel or videos, if you really like our contents, why don't you go press on that little thank button there. So a little bit of contribution to our channel and the back-end support, and all this money will actually go into the whole team and creating all these contents and videos available for you free, in order to actually get all the updates. Okay, now let's jump into the actual content of what we're going to discuss today. Obviously, we are going to look into every state and territory, so I will not waste any seconds of this video. Let's jump into the first one with New South Wales. So obviously, the only bad news about New South Wales is that the occupation list has not been publicized yet. But let's go in there and have a look with the requirement previously and compared to last year and this year. It's not much of differences. The only thing required is the residency requirement for 190. You got to be there, got to be in New South Wales for at least 6 months, and also there's work experience and point score. So not just the work experience required, but you need to show that your work experience is in order pass the skill assessment and get that additional 5 points within the EOI skill select system. If you don't get that, forget about New South Wales, because every single nomination by New South Wales requires that. So this is 491. It's the same thing here. It requires residency rather than 6 months. It's reduced down to 3 months. But again, you still need that work experience and point score thing. So if you don't have that, there's no way you can actually do it with New South Wales. And currently we're only just waiting for the skill occupation list, because without that we don't know what the detail is going to be. So I assume there's going to be a lot of detail being put it in under the pathway 1 and pathway 2. So at this point in time, unfortunately, it's the 27th of August. We still don't have the occupation list for New South Wales. So anyway, let's move on to Victoria. So Victoria is the most popular skill migration destination for 2022 and 23. Why? Because there's no criteria. So as previously advised, I would suggest that anyone who wants to migrate to Australia, you put a 189 EOI, and also you put a 190 EOI for Victoria, because there's just no criteria at all. They want anyone. Now, key thing here, even if it doesn't have any criteria, you are still in a skill selection pool. That means the best point, the highest point mark person or candidate will be selected first with the prioritized selections there. So it doesn't mean you meet the minimum, you actually get invited, although there is a lot more quota be given to the state of Victoria. But there is still competition within each other. And make sure you put a new one in. So dump the old EOI and ROI, and you put the new one in. So you need to put the EOI in, and then you need to go and log into Victoria's portal and putting another new ROI, registration of interest. Otherwise, you will not be picked. Okay, so the changes here is that there is currently onshore and offshore, and there's a lot more eligible occupation by removing the previously stupid STEM, skill working, and the target sector thing. So there's no more that, no more target sectors. So obviously they remove the workforce skill pathway thing as well. So basically, let's go back to the rule is that the Victoria does not have any criteria. It basically goes back to the very minimum that requires by any skilled migrants. So why don't we just put it in anyway? So okay, now next one is Queensland. So Queensland has updated a few things here. Obviously they have if we can go to the visa options here, you can actually see there are a couple stream. It's actually on the very far left, but you can't see it. But anyhow, I'm going there straight away into the detail. There's not much of differences between the previous criteria and the current criteria. No, the reason why is I think because the Queensland hasn't been given as much quota as what they supposed to have. But again, bear in mind this is only an interim allocation, means it's temporary allocation. Once we finish that job and skills summit, I think next week, yes, next week, with all the increase of annual intake quota, I think all the state and territory will be given additional quota to be in. So there will be a lot more changes or relaxation, or should I say a lift of a lot of restrictions again. So make sure you subscribe to my channel. Now, okay, now if you graduate, now how do you become a graduate of Queensland University? You gotta study 100% either PhD, master or bachelor degree, and there are some different differentiation. From PhD you get 190, and master you gotta be in those science or technology or engineer, IT field. Otherwise you can only access to 491 criteria, and bachelor unfortunately you need to have a GPA of 5.5 or higher. Now we go into the next stream is the working in Queensland. So apart from study very good, very well, achieve academically, you can actually, after you graduated, you get that 485 visa, you continue to work in your skill occupation in Queensland, you still have that eligibility. So it's not actually harder. Well, it is harder than Victoria, but it's still quite fair in a way. Now they have done a little bit of changes on the English requirement. Previously in the last year's criteria, they want everyone, including carpenter, including plumber, including cook and chef, to get IELTS 7. Now you don't need that anymore. As long as your occupation is in trade occupation, all you need is to meet the minimum requirement competent. Or if you're not those trade occupations, then obviously you need to have a higher English, which is fair. And as long as you have work experiences and you hit that EOI point with the 80 or higher, you get 190. Lower than that, you go to 491. So that's still pretty fair, not that hard. Now offshore is open. There is a specific occupation list for offshore. The QSOL, I'm not going to go in there. Again, if you get points higher than 80, you get 190. Lower than that, you go through 491. Now there's a occupation required in that there. You may want to click in there and go through that as well. Now last but not least, Queensland do still promote small business owner. So for example, you graduate, you get that 485 visa, you're working in Queensland, and you start to have that entrepreneurship, innovation. You want to have a small business. Make sure you have those business not in Brisbane. You can have it in Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, Toowoomba, Cairns, Townsville, anywhere apart from Brisbane. And all you need to do is you need to spend at least 100,000. and then you need to own 100% of the shares and operate those businesses 6 months, then obviously you meet this requirement. So it's not that hard as well. It's just a little bit of entrepreneurship that's required, but obviously building business, there is always a risk there. So make sure you have the right person, right legal or accounting person to actually assess those business for you. Okay, now South Australia. South Australia has just recently opened up its migration pathway. It's still, again, the best way to actually search yourself for South Australia is still forget about going to those criteria because it's too wordy and it doesn't give you the full scope. So all you need to do is go into their skill occupation list search engine. This is the best thing that you can do because you don't need to go through all the other criteria out there. So all you need to do, for example, if you are, let's say network analysis, for example, okay, the ANSI code 263113. Okay, if you click on that, it will tell you all the streams available for that occupation. So whether you're a graduate in South Australia, and here is the criteria, and if you are a high performer, you need to get GPA 6.0 or higher. That's even higher than the required by Queensland. So a lot of people complain about South Australia is actually getting harder, but well, anyway, that's just the way it is because the economy there is just not as big as Queensland or compared to Victoria or New South Wales. So obviously they can't just forever relaxing their policies there. So okay, so if you're a graduate and you want to get 190, make sure you after you graduate, you still working in that field for 6 months, you get 190. 3 months, you get 491. If you're a high performer, you get that access there. Now again, same thing towards what Queensland offers. Once you graduate, you're working. So this is actually redundant. I mean, didn't this one require you work in the field, and now you're working in South Australia? So if you work more than 6 months or something like that, perhaps 24 months, then you actually access to this stream there. But again, it's just a little bit redundant, especially at 491. Here you require to work for at least 3 months. Now this is only 6 months. This is only just 3 months more than that stream there. So there's a little bit of redundancy. And long-term resident, that basically means you have been living in South Australia for more than 5 years. And if you work in an outer region of South Australia, obviously you can access to that one as well. And the highly skilled, talented, and you might want to go into that part. I think that's all for the not just the high performers, but I think it's again redundant, but it's just not for graduates. It's probably for someone who has been in the field for long term, and obviously they are open for offshore as well. So that's how you can actually work around it for South Australia. Now next one is Tasmania. Now Tasmania is good, but their quota, the interim allocation is just very, very low. Now since Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, and all the other state and territory had opened up for their skill migrations, they have basically outbid Tasmania already. Tasmania need to do more, but I think for the capacity of its size of economy, I don't think they can do too much. But anyway, if you go to 190, all you need to do, go to their website and scroll to the very far left, and here we go. There's all the stream available for Tasmania. So it's similar, and all it does, it has 3 stream: skill employment, skill graduate, that's graduate from Tasmania unis, and then once you click in there are some attributes, what they call it. So there's gold, green, and orange. So if that's that you wanted to be at the gold range, then you go to the green, and then you go to the orange. And there's also a pathway that Tasmania offer, because they now understand that not all the professional graduate in Tasmania could actually get the job closely related. So Tasmania does not need you to work in a closely related occupation anymore. So you may want to check that out as well. But again, because the limited number of quota is still very competitive in Tasmania. It's actually sometimes more competitive than other states. So bear in mind, if you really love Tasmania, that is the disadvantage there. And 491 is still the same, just adding a few more pathway for the business owner and the offshore pathway there, so you might want to check that out. Now by the end of this video, I'm gonna summarize everything together and give you the best option that you wish and the strategy that you need to do. Okay, now Western Australia. Now there's not too much of differences between previous and the current, apart from they are giving out more occupations and dropping some of the English requirement down, and also they waive that $200 of the application fee, which is great, but it's only $200. I mean, the visa application alone is like $5,000, so $200 alone doesn't really make any differences. So the way to actually check the WA's skill migration is pretty easy. Just go into to combine occupation list. Now, although their occupation list is not as pretty and like search engine type that the South Australia has designed, but again, it's still the way to do it. So apart from search it's this whole list of this, and you need to go through. So find your occupation and see which boxes has been ticked, and that's it. That's basically how you need to find out whether or not you can actually get it. So and that's for Western Australia. Okay, now next one is the Northern Territory. Now there's the only changes for the NT is the website. Now it used to be all purple, now they got this blue thing, and the eligibility, there's a little bit of improvement here, putting in the additional requirement for onshore applicant. So again, there's not too much of differences here. There's a strong employment outcome and long-term commitments. There is additional advantage if you study and graduate from Northern Territory and other NT residents there. But again, all you need to do is you go to the occupation list. Sorry, they don't offer the search engine thing. It's still the same thing, but having a whole long list like Western Australia, they decided to put it more beautiful way and dissect it into 3 parts. But it's still the same, how you can read it, going through the list, and then read on the right hand side of the comments on the additional criteria requirement there. And so that's basically what Northern Territory has offered. Now last but not least, let's go to Canberra. There's not much of changes for the Canberra matrix, so they have dissected into 2 parts. One is Canberra resident, means you actually currently in Canberra or you're overseas at the moment. So once you click on that, it brings you into the actual matrix. Now it's actually easier to navigate rather than going through a very wordy stuff. So you read the question on the left, and then you tick whatever on the right. So they give you the points. The higher the point, the higher the opportunity that you actually get. Now bear in mind, Canberra does have very limited quota as well, just like Tasmania. So not many people actually get picked. And obviously nowadays, because that we have the options like Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, so Canberra matrix now is not really that advantageous. But if you wanted to migrate to Canberra, obviously that's the way to go. So okay, let's summarize, and that's how many I spent about 18 minutes. That's pretty good to summarize everything. Now to rank it down, obviously the strategy, I've done a strategic lodgement video that I've last week or a couple days ago. Anyway, can't remember, just been too busy. Okay, now is that you put an EOI for 189, because the annual intake is going to increase. So we haven't seen 189 to get invited for 2 years. Now we're getting that recently, so that's opportunity there. Now create additional EOI for all the additional state and territories if you wish for. Now, the one I always recommend will be Victoria. Why? Because it just doesn't have any criteria at all. Just put in there and see what happens. The only person that they cannot put Victoria is that you're in Australia, but you are not located in Victoria. So once you go into Victoria's portal, they will ask whether or not you're in Australia or not. If you're in Australia and you're not in Victoria, those are the person that they will not get invitation at all. So if you're offshore, obviously you put Victoria in. Okay, now the next EOI that you should really be selected for is the next preferred state that you wish to go. Okay, so it can be Queensland, it can be New South Wales, it can be South Australia, whichever. Then you go into those state nomination criteria and check out your occupation, which type of upstream pathway that you actually meet the requirement, and put in there. Now, different state does have different procedures. For example, South Australia will require to put in the ROI as well. Victoria require to put an ROI as well. Now, Queensland, if you're doing small business, if you're doing study and graduate in Queensland, you require to put in some forms. New South Wales does not require any form. Western Australia, there's no other form as well required. So every procedure is a little bit different. So bear in mind, you watch not just this video, but watch those explanatory detailed video that I've done previously and follow those procedures. Anyway, should you have more question, query, more than welcome to leave comment right down below. So this video is all about an overall seeing and managing in a very quick fashion to describe all the state nomination criteria. Should you really like our content, well, hopefully you can press that little super chat for us. Anyway, I'll see you next video. Goodbye.